earthquake, a greater earthquake. Remember when Jesus was describing the things that would be occurring, he said the the tribulation was going to be such that we had never seen before. So yeah, we've had earthquakes that were six on the scale of 6 or 7, or I think there may have been an 8 at one point somewhere. But imagine earthquakes more intense than that. Imagine uh, hurricanes more intense than what we've already experienced. Imagine, fires and tsunamis and floods and things more intense than what we've ever experienced. Because he said it will be not like anything else we have ever experienced or seen. When we see these signs in the heavens, when we see these, the sun being black and the moon appearing as blood, stars falling from heaven. Well, I think I may have mentioned last week or maybe the week before about the phenomena, right, of Jupiter and Saturn, and everyone was in such a tizzy about the fact that this was the conjunction that was happening with them, that it doesn't happen for every 400 to 800 or maybe 1,000 years. Well, where did that all come from? Why are we so fascinated with it? Do you think that that just occurred now in our life in 20, in the 20th century? No, this fascination with the skies, with the opening up of all the signs has been around for millennia, just thousands and thousands of years. In fact, that is precisely what the Lord told us to do. Now you say, what you say? What you say? So let's see, where is this? Where is this? Where does this come from? So let's and the reason, and we're going back to do this background because it's important for us to to try to understand why are these signs and signs that we're seeing, why are they so important, or are they important at all, right? Should we even be looking to them? Well, let's look in Genesis 1 at verse 14. I think that we went over this some time ago, but let's go back and review it again. Genesis 1 verse 14. And it says, "And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule by day, that being the sun, and the night, the moon. And he made the stars also." But the first thing that he tells us right away is that these lights in the firmament of heaven, dividing the day from the night, let them be for signs and for seasons. And is it no small miracle that everything, calendars today, farmers, all folks throughout since the beginning of man has used stars, the moon, the sun for seasons. We chart the lunar patterns, we chart the solar patterns, we chart the stars. All of this was so man could time the seasons. And ironically, when you do more study, you'll find that many of the festivals or the feasts that the Lord has told us to always celebrate, those feasts occur on new moons, and they're marked by those times, and they happen for a certain length of time, while certain movement is occurring in the skies. So so when we see this happening in the book of Revelation, it only follows the pattern that God has already set forth for us to see. In fact, he even told people specifically when, um, when the new year was supposed to happen, right? He told them in Exodus 34 and 2, Exodus 34, and 22, not 2. I'm sorry. Sometimes I think I'm a little dyslexic or something or whatever. But anyway, in Exodus 34 and 22, and thou shalt observe the feast of weeks of the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. Thrice in the year shall all your men, children appear before the Lord uh, and the God of Israel. And right there, he's telling you when is that supposed to happen. And if you read just prior to that in verse 21, as you know, we have been instructed that we should read the verses before and after so that we get the full context. 6 days shall thou work, but on the seventh day thou shalt rest in earing time, and in harvest thou shalt rest. And we're not talking about the barley harvest here. This is not the end of the year or the fall. This is the springtime of the year. And the month specifically is Abib. So we should be mindful that the Lord has indeed set patterns for us to understand, and set patterns for us to be able to understand when these seasons occur. And as I said before, um, we should be mindful of those seasons and those patterns, because they will help us to understand uh, how things are laid out um, in the Bible, and also the significance of these times and seasons that we are to appreciate that God is setting forth for us. So let us go into the seal number 7. Seal number 7. Very interesting seal. And what are we to understand is happening in this seventh seal? And if you're following along, that is going to be chapter 8, verse 1. And I'm reading today from the King James Version, the authorized text. Revelations 8, verse 1. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of a half an hour. Now let's just pause right here. And let's be reminded of all the noise that we heard in the previous time, right? Remember when John was first describing the vision, he talked about the trumpets. He talked about the lights, the lampstands and the trumpets and all of the hosts, the heavenly hosts singing worship to God over and over and over again, right? And how loud those trumpets must have been sounding in heaven, how bright it was. You man's concerts, most times you go to a concert, it's at night, everything's dark, right? And you have all these lights flashing around, right? Well, that's nothing. That is nothing compared to the vision that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, seeing the great fire and the glory of God shining all around, such that we would not need a sun or a moon. The lampstands all blazing, right? And the trumpets being loud, blowing. So now all this noise had been going on, and now all of a sudden there's silence for 30 minutes. Have you ever sat in silence for 30 minutes? Okay, so we won't do 30 minutes right now. But just that pause just now, right? For some people, sitting in silence for even a moment they start, getting a little uncomfortable, and they're shifting around, and they're anxious. Some people actually become anxious in the quiet. Uh, and I don't know that that's, necessarily saying something bad or good about an individual, just that maybe they're uncomfortable at that moment until they quiet themselves. And then for them, that 30 minutes, if you've ever done it, it's an amazing experience. And I know that you think that you probably have, because maybe you prayed, and when you were praying, you weren't saying the prayer out loud and you were quiet. But no, I'm talking about silence, quieting your mind, shutting down all the noise that goes on in our minds, turning off the TV, turning off the radio, turning off, the cell phones, whatever, 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 and just sitting in silence. Can you imagine just silence? If you've ever been out in the countryside, in the middle of the night, maybe actually just before dawn, around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., that silence. I mean, you can just hear, even the crickets are quiet. It's an amazing thing. Uh, that silence, and it's a blessing if you can achieve and experience that silence. But here we have had all this, this concert going on in heaven, and now there's 30 minutes of silence, sort of like that stop time that I was talking about with musicians. Dramatic, right? When the music has been going on and then all of a sudden there's a stop, it really makes you pay attention. And I'm guessing, right here at this moment, because just prior to this, right, we had the four horsemen doing all their stuff that they were going to do, killing people and conquering, and came to conquer and conquer. And those that the black horse, that the prices were so high that people couldn't buy and sell, and don't hurt the oil and the wine and the balances that were going to be shown and forth in all of their regalia. Remember how they were described. And they stood before God and they were given seven trumpets. This would be an awe-inspiring vision, view, time in this play. It should be seeing these trumpets being distributed to these angels. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense. So a censer is that bowl, sometimes made out of brass or some metal. If you've seen them in maybe Catholic churches or some Orthodox churches, they have them. Maybe you've even seen them on display somewhere. These censers where they would burn the incense. So there were large containers where you could burn the incense, and in this censer, they're burning, uh, he says here, much incense. So there's a great amount of it, right? So much that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne of God. And the smoke of the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before God out of the angel's hands. And the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. My goodness. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and earthquake. These things are constantly themes repeated throughout Revelation and even throughout the Bible itself, especially when we look at Daniel, and recently when we read last night parts of Matthew 24 and 25. These earthquakes, these thunderings, the lightning, and the voices. What are these voices? Are they singing praises? Are they worshiping? Or what are the voices saying? It doesn't say. But clearly, there was silence for 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden, there's a lot of noise going on. Again, very dramatic scene that we're seeing. And let's be specific. This censer filled with the fire of the altar. Remember the fires that were surrounding the altar that we read about. with the 24 elders